All right. This is number 17 of our short little series. And I'm going to, I've already had a number of people tell me they're not going to be here on Monday. And so, which is okay with me. It's all right. I'm used to it. I'm used to that kind of treatment. It's okay. But just to, I'm not saying this to discourage anybody, but the session on Monday is one of those, it's got one of those dirty words in the title. Accountability, right? And so, would some people read into that, if you haven't done anything, right, well, anyhow. So it's not, that's what we're going to talk about, and so I'm just saying. Because what kinds of things would we mention in an accountability class? Any ideas? Like, are you building your database? Are you talking to 10 people a day? Are you following up with notes? Are you previewing homes? Right? And if the answer is no, then you need to start doing those things, right? I'm not going to do that. You've heard that enough. But let's go to the fun thing, which is, I don't know if this is fun, but this is, I'm going to start on 17.4 or -4, which is get your head in the game. And what we're talking about is closing the transaction. And it says, this would be a surprise to many people in real estate, that closing is not an event. One of the things you're going to find is that some people think that that's what it is. You write up a contract, the contract is accepted, and then you sit around and wait for the check, right, for the event. It's a complex process that involves a series of steps, multiple parties, and a myriad of details. Doesn't that sort of sound like every class that we've had so far, right? Pretty much. Why is this a good thing for you to learn how to do? Because you want your transactions to close at a extremely high rate. It will be, if you know what you're doing, it'll be very rare for you to lose a deal. Successful closing means more income for you, great relationships going forward, and more business from referrals. In the 20-some years that I was active selling real estate, I only can recall maybe 2 transactions that didn't close once escrow had opened, only a couple of times. That was usually near the beginning, and they were painful. I also had an opportunity, because I was a manager, to watch real estate agents screw up escrows over and over again, right? And trying to help them. I don't know if you've ever heard the phrase or the concept that helping other people is a great way to learn, right? Watching agents wallow around, not being able to sleep, having screaming conversations with other agents and their clients, calling me and threatening lawsuits, having lawyers call me, threatening to sue us because of what the agent did or didn't do, right? You understand? After that was quite an education, right? And so the idea is that if you do this right, most of your escrows will close, right? And if you don't do it right, it'll be painful, it won't be profitable, and it'll be an unhappy experience, right? This is, and I'm going to talk about what makes escrows go bad. I managed a really large company, and I saw lots of escrows go bad. Lots of escrows go bad. What is this for your customers? They want a short time to close with the least amount of hassle, right? They want this to close too without hassle. Doing this poorly will not make anyone happy. As a customer service professional, it is your job to oversee all steps are completed on time and all parties are aware of their roles and what's expected of them. Essentially, your role becomes that of project manager. Some of you, I've shared that I have Google Alerts, and I have Google Alerts researching things, right, for me all the time. And one of the subjects which I discontinued a little while ago because I get like 1,000 things a day. One of the subjects that I had a Google Alert working on was online project management, right? Because that's really what we're talking about. Closing an escrow. And Keller Williams has some resources, that's probably the reason that I stopped researching it, was because at the other company they didn't have any tools or systems for this, and real estate agents didn't want to pay anything. And so everybody wanted to know what they could use for free as an online project management system, right? We actually have one. Does anybody know what our online system is called? eEdge, yes. And it includes, and I'll spend a couple minutes on that, but there's some webinars that I can't cover all this right now. So a successful contract to close process has 3 outcomes. 1, we want it to close on time as expected. Wouldn't that be nice? 2, we want the process to be smooth and painless. Wouldn't that be nice? And you get future business due to your 10+ customer service. Moving is one of the most traumatic experiences most people suffer in their life. There was actually a study done by psychologists, and I don't know all of the details, but after death of a parent, death of a child, death of a spouse, divorce, it was physical relocation in terms of traumas that people suffer. And I was also the relocation director for the others. And I would be talking to people that were relocating, and I would ask them, how was the move? And every once in a while somebody would say, it wasn't bad, we had a good agent, right? You understand? It wasn't bad, we had a good agent, right? And so what a good agent has to have empathy, all right? You understand that's not sympathy? That there's a difference between the two. Sympathy is when you're walking by a lake and you see somebody drowning, and you stand there and you watch them drown, and then you feel bad, right? You understand? I mean, you watch them drown, you feel bad. Empathy is more like jumping in the water and swimming out to save them, right? That's not necessarily a dictionary definition, but to be able to anticipate the problems that people are going to have and to do something in advance to prevent them from occurring is what we really mean. That's why it was invaluable to me to manage so many transactions, right? Because I got to watch other people suffer, right? Which is always better than doing it yourself. In order to achieve these outcomes, you need to be at the top of your game. This is not a time to wing it. One of the things that I'm just going to suggest. I'm not going to try her last name. And she's at the Campbell office, and she's what we call a transaction coordinator, right? And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I printed 10 copies of the handout. I know, but you've got one. All right, that's fine. So now I know Jackie will come. All right, isn't that right? Isn't that right? Jackie's going to come. How come it's like every time I add one, and I end up with one too few?
So you're happy to see all the...
Oh, I'm really happy. I really am. Yeah. This is really great. This is yeah. No, I am. I'm really happy. I am. I'm really happy. I really am. Okay. So I'm printing one just because I know somebody else will show. Not right now.
Mike, I had one lady that had lived in a house for 25 years, and the day that she's supposed to get out, she just lollygags and doesn't do anything, and she says, no, I'm not leaving. And the people are coming at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and I'm going, oh God. So I called her brother and sister, and they came over, and they moved her out, and they hired somebody to clean up the house. But she wasn't going to leave.
I've used a tranquilizer gun and a gurney that I rented from a... Anyhow, Lindsay is a transaction coordinator. Even though she said, even if you're at this office, you probably want to use her. Right? You're not required to. Yes.
There's a course being offered through SCORE, transaction coordinating. Is that something more?
Probably not. It wouldn't hurt. I'm going to talk a little bit about transaction coordinating, but I would suggest for the amount of the expense, and we're talking maybe $350 to $400, depending on whether or not it's a listing or a closing, and the money comes out of your money out of when escrow closes, right? And and you're not required to use an escrow coordinator, but if you're new in particular, see, what I always tell people, if you're new, you want to do it because that way you'll make sure everything is done properly. But the reality is the more experience you have, the more likely you are to do it. Right? All you have to do is do it yourself for a few times, and you realize how nice it would be to have somebody do this for you. So you could go and take the class on transaction coordinator, and you would learn how to do it. But what I was taught by one of my mentors, and he said that if you want to make $500 an hour, right, don't do $12 an hour work, right? That's he had. I said, can I write that down? Right, he said, if you want to make $500 an hour, don't do $20 an hour work, right? Don't do $30 an hour work. You don't want to do that, right? And so transactions coordinators aren't paid as well as real estate agents are that are working, right? So it would be easier to have somebody else do it. All right, this isn't rocket science, but basically they have good checklists and software, right? Which, anyhow. But I would still recommend that you use Lindsay. Right? You're not required to. Right? There's no. Yes. Most of the agents at this office use her. There are just sometimes people I've used in the past a transaction coordinator who lived in Oregon. Right? It's called a virtual assistant. And do you understand? There's no reason that the person has to be in the room where you are. Right? Because all of this is done by scanning, email, online, right? None of this actually involves physically moving things around, right? So the fact that the person isn't next to you doesn't mean anything, right? We have phones and computers. All right, so this is not a time to you stay organized and follow checklists. Now, I used to tell new agents that you might want to do the first one or two yourself, because you can then learn the process. I've stopped giving that advice, right? Because one of the things that I've learned is that if you've been to some of the Keller Williams programs, like, remember, how many of you were at the business planning? A bunch of you were, all right. They talked about personality styles, right? The different personality styles. Is the personality style of a good transaction coordinator the same personality style that you would find in a successful real estate agent? The answer is no. Right? Because a person that's a good transaction coordinator is generally a high C or a high S, right? They're more into the supportive and analytical parts, which generally are not the characteristic traits of somebody who's successful in the business. So the better talker, Lindsay, by the way, does not like to I invited her to come, the last time I did Ignite was over there, to come and talk to the class about what she did. She talked for less than 5 minutes and ran out of the room, right? When we are doing a meeting, a team meeting, and we ask her to talk, it's difficult to get her to talk, and she won't talk very long and then wants to leave the room. You understand, most good salespeople, if I let them talk at a team meeting, right, right, yeah. I mean, we shooting darts at them to get them to stop and drag them off the, right? So you understand, having somebody who's good at that, why not, right? It's a very small price to pay, and if it doesn't close, you don't owe anything. I believe that's true. Taking the checklist approach to closings helps ensure a greater likelihood. The checklist approach. Do airline pilots have them?
Yes.
Yeah, hopefully. I was actually flying. I used to fly a lot in the company I worked for, and I remember I was in like Indiana or someplace, and it was snowing and cold and ice. And the guy I'm sitting next to was complaining because the pilot kept walking around and looking at the underside of the airplane, and he said, "Why don't we leave?" And I said, let him take his time and look at the wings and things like that. Doctors have checklists, lawyers have checklists. We might have checklists, right? So we're now down to contracts to closing. Notice there's 2 arrows here because we have a contract, now we want to close. Gary Keller, co-founder and chairman of the board of Keller Williams Realty, believes that during closing, agents have 2 agendas. 1, to move the current transaction to a successful closing, and 2, to ensure referrals. A significant percentage, when they ask buyers and sellers, how did they find their real estate agent? Over 40% of buyers and over 50% of sellers, when it comes down to it, it was a referral or personal contact. A significant percentage, something in the neighborhood of 25% of the business is done by past customers and clients. So it's like a restaurant. Do you understand? If you have a restaurant and people come in and the food is terrible and the service is horrible, not only don't they come back, but they tell their friends to stay away too. You understand? Yet, if they really like it and they tell their friends about it, you get more business. If you do not run your career in such a way to generate repeat and referral business, your chances of surviving are pretty much nil. Do you understand? Just like the restaurant that has to live off of new customers every day because no one would ever go back again. Right? Do you understand that? This is, and if you don't get, and you have to be not queasy about this. Ask for referrals. Sometimes, by the way, what agents, first of all, some agents don't ask at all, and especially for sellers, the time to ask is during escrow. Because what happens to a lot of them in our area is when the escrow closes, they leave the county. All right? So if you don't talk to them early, you won't get referrals. Buyers are at least here, right? They're here. You know where they live, right? You can pop by. All right, most agents don't get that, right? We want to get referrals. Gary personally endorses using the checklist in this power session to get the transaction closed properly and gain referrals. Whether you represent the buyer or the seller, sit down with your clients and walk them through the appropriate checklist to make wow, that's a weird idea. So you should explain what's going to happen in the transaction. Is that what a doctor does? Let's say you're going to go in for an operation. The doctor's going to say, well, we want you here at 8. Right, I'm going to show up around 10, isn't that right? You know, to actually do it. But you're going to be here at 8, and you're going to go here, and then you're going to go there, and they're going to do this, and they're going to do that, and then I'm going right, and then afterwards you're going to go, and you're going to right, and so you need to use the same technique. If you keep clear about short-term goals, properly closing transactions while keeping up with your daily 10-4 activities, you cannot fail. One of the things that happens when you work, I'm sorry to use that word, but if you do the daily 10-4 and you keep doing it, you understand it builds on itself. Like Rick Jihal was talking about that, because people that say, not now, maybe in 3 months, pretty soon it's 3 months. Right? And they say, not now, maybe in 6 months, pretty soon it's 6 months. So it starts to build on itself. And if you were to spend an hour to 2 a day, 5 days a week, doing the daily 10-4, you would start to have appointments. Well, what I've seen happen to agents, I've seen them succeed into failure. Because what will happen is, we call this prospecting, but I'm going to call it lead generation. So lead generation leads to clients. Right, and then clients lead to escrows, and escrows lead to closes. And then they're out of business. Because as soon as they get clients, they stop lead generating. Why should I lead generate? I already have too many people to show property to on the weekend. I guess I should take time off. Why, right? Take a break. It's Miller time. Right? You understand? Stop. And then when they have escrows and you're counting all the money that you're going to make when the escrows close, why lead generate? Your hands are full doing this. But guess what happens when they close? There's no more clients. And then you have to start the process over again. There's a rule, which I know I mentioned in the first class rev up, but I'm going to say it again. It's called the 90-day rule. And what that generally says is that what you're doing today will produce results in 90 days. Right? Now, that doesn't mean you couldn't call somebody today who says, come over, I'd like to sell my house. But as a percentage basis, 80% of what you're going to get your results from are not today. 80% of those results will be in 90 days. So if you haven't, so that means if you're starting back at zero, it'll be 90 days before you start. Do you understand? I've seen dozens of agents quit because they had 4 or 5 transactions, they all closed, and that was it. They quit because they had no more clients, they had no more business, and the idea of going back and starting over again was depressing, and they just wouldn't do it.
Can I ask a question?
Yep.
When you use a transaction attorney,
Coordinator.
a transaction coordinator, the only thing she really does is coordinate the paperwork, right?
Correct.
You have to manage the transaction when things have to get done, getting the other agent to do.
You're the one that should be talking to clients and other agents. Right, because her job is to make sure that the files are complete and organized. Real estate agents are notoriously bad at keeping files organized. Right, they're notoriously bad at it.
So she just does the paperwork.
Right,
Okay.
and make sure that everything is done and it's done properly and that all the forms are filled out correctly. It's a valuable service. Can you afford to hire an assistant right now? No, but you could hire a transaction coordinator. It's a per transaction thing. Right. And so going back to lead generation is like breathing. It's not something you just do once and stop. Right? You understand? You need to be doing this every day, even when you're busy. Our busiest agents spend time lead generating every day. Right?
So what do you do? Do you just, when you have all these inspections that you have to
Do them in the afternoon.
do them all in the
Do it
afternoon?
in the afternoon.
Lead generation.
Do them in the afternoon, right? And if you have so many inspections, because you have so many escrows, think about hiring another agent to work with you, right? Or you could hire an assistant who has a lockbox key, right, with a license. Right, but right now our problem probably is not that we have so many escrows, we don't have possibly the time to open up but you ought to, but you understand what you need to do is every morning schedule prospecting, lead generation, right, fun time, happy hours, right, and do that, and then in the afternoon make your appointments. Right. And some agents get all locked in. I was having a conversation today with Renee because we're talking about who to invite to come and talk to you about the different components, and all real estate agents have preferences, and there's even a person that I may invite that I don't particularly like, but that's not necessarily important. I'm not going to tell you which one it is, right? But it's not necessarily important. And so I've had agents, or I said, well, my property inspector can't make it in the morning. They can't make it in the afternoon. They can only do morning. And I'd say get a different property inspector, and they'd go, you got to be no. So they change their schedule to fit their property inspector schedule. Right? Then they change their schedule to meet the termite inspector schedule. Right? Did you understand? So what are you? Right? Chopped liver? Right? Yeah, I would just say, fine, I'd call a different termite company. Right? I just call another one. until they were able to do it on my terms, right? Don't, and real estate agents are weird about this. Some of them is like trying to take the baby bear cub away from the mother bear, right? No, she's my friend. Now I'm going to let them do it. Well, all right, but you understand you need to have, this is a business. You should have relationships with more than one property inspector, all right? All right. Okay, so the power session gets you on track. We're going to study the basic steps in the contract to close process. We're going to identify your contract to close responsibilities. We're going to explore common issues. That's the fun part. Review contents of packets. Learn how to leverage your resources. I've sort of talked about that. Ways to implement systems. And our affirmation, let's all say this, when I end my day, I feel great with what I've accomplished. Well, that was just enthusiastic and rousing. Yes, thank you.
Do you have a pool of available resources
Yes,
that everybody can pick and choose?
yes. They usually put their cards over there. I'll make a new list, but generally this is not a hard thing to find. If you just ask agents, they'll, oh yeah, and if you go to real estate functions, people will be handing cards and things like that. But
These have been scrubbed.
right, pretty much, right? And so the timing, the home warranty company doesn't matter, right? There's no time, but we're talking about inspections are when there's particular times and you want to have a mindset that you're going to sell a whole lot of real estate. And if you're selling a whole lot of real estate, can you change your schedule to fit everybody else's schedule? The answer is no, you can't do that. Right? So you need to have at least 3. By the way, one of the things that I've told my clients, I'll give them a list of names of 3 inspectors. Sometimes I would let them pick the inspector if they wanted to. Right? Sometimes they say, I don't want to. But I would say, here's 3. Why don't you call and talk to them and pick the one you want? Why not? Let them do that. Right? Why not? Right? That means that they're not going to blame me if the person misses something because they picked the inspector. So what I would recommend, this is a good thing to do when you're in the business, is for you to talk to 3, to get 3 that you've talked to and like, and put them and write up your own little list and get 3 of that, because you want to be able to share that. You don't want to just have an inspector and try and push people to it.
My son's an attorney, and he gave me a real strong talking to because one of his cases was interior, decorator, person who came in to do work on the house before the house was sold, and she was sued because she did something wrong. I don't know what it was. She did something wrong, but they also tried to sue the real estate agent too because she recommended that interior decorator.
We have our forms that we have, the buyers and seller signs say that we do not warrant or stand by or anything when it comes to inspectors and other third-party personnel. However, if you're in small claims court, they're not going to care about that. They're not going to care about that. And this is a conundrum. Can I use that? That's not a dirty word, is it? No. It's a conundrum because I've known brokers who've said never, ever, ever recommend anybody to anybody. And the problem with that is that if you go to a doctor and the doctor says, well, you actually need to see a specialist, they're going to tell you the name of a specialist they recommend. Right? The professional's not going to say, well, you're going to have to go on the internet and search out heart doctors to find one because I'm not going to tell you anybody that I recommend because I'm afraid you're going to sue me. Do you understand the conundrum? Because one of the things that you can do that's of service is to help them find the allied resources that are necessary to close the transaction, right? So my compromise was I would give them 3 names and ask them if they wanted to interview them. Some of them, engineers, oftentimes would say, yeah, I'd like to talk to these guys. And then one time the guy went and found somebody on his own and said, can I use him? And I said, yes, please use that one, right? So make it happen. Closing is also known as settlement. It is a detail-driven process. And if you're not good at details, then we need a transaction coordinator. A variety of parties to legally finalize the sales transaction. So there's buyers, sellers, co-op agents. Sometimes they're not as... I actually read an article once. It was like based on a seminar, and it was called, "Isn't there a duty of the cooperating agent to actually cooperate?" Right? You know, sometimes they're not very cooperative. Attorneys, in our market, you don't see those unless something goes wrong. In other areas, attorneys are required to participate in the closing. Escrow companies, closing officers, their assistants, third party, loss mitigation, that involves short sales and REO properties, relocation. There are relocation companies that are sometimes involved. Sometimes it's an estate. There's a trust, the referral sources. There's a lot of people here. As project manager of the transaction, you're the project manager of the transaction. You must ensure that all parties deliver on their commitments on time. Coco stole it. She said she wasn't going to give it to you either. Your keys to success in the contract to close are: be familiar with the steps of the contract to close process. Don't allow things to get hung up. Use checklists. Communicate with all parties. Think in terms of alternatives. Be a problem solver. Reassure your client at every opportunity. Now, next week, we're going to have the class on Monday, which is on accountability, just in case you don't want to show up. I thought, that's what it's on. But, so there'll be no class next week, but starting the week after that, I'm scheduling in, I've already booked the escrow company, and the Old Republic title is going to come here, and they're going to do Escrow 101 and how to read a prelim. When the escrow officers ask me, what should we talk about, right, I tell them I would like you to cover all the ways that real estate agents screw up escrows and how not to do that, right? If you want a topic, that would be the topic, yes.
So just to be clear, you're not having class on Monday?
I'm having class on Monday, but only for those that are...
Willing to share?
Already several people said that they're not going to come. Right, and so I'm meeting Lupi and Coco anyhow, and they're the only two that show up because of it's called accountability, and it's a short class anyhow, right? I'm not trying to discourage anyone, but then just saying. Right. So you want, and so we're going to have the inspectors come in and talk, and home warranty and disclosures come in, because you need to understand this stuff, right? But that'll not be next week, but the week after on the normal days, Monday, Thursday, and Friday. Right? And then you definitely want to sit through the escrow class.
You're going to send out notice?
Yes, they're booking the other people right now, right? But everybody that's here, you should, all right. Okay. Project, let's go on to the next one. Contract to close process. This looks like fun. You can download this flow chart from the toolkit for Ignite, which I'm not going to go back online and show you where the toolkit is. By the way, I've had clients, sometimes engineers, ask me to explain what escrow is. What does that mean? What's going to happen? Most real estate agents don't provide any kind of real instruction to their clients as to what's going to happen. I mean, it's 80% of the agents don't. They explain it as it's happening. How would that feel if your doctor did that? Right? He didn't say what he was going to do, but while he was doing it, said, oh, by the way, we're cutting off your finger. What? Why? Just trust me. So we've made an offer. It's either been accepted, if it's countered, or rejected, right? Those are the different choices. And then we have inspections. And notice the choices here are acceptance, reply, or rejection. What that means is that if the buyer is doing inspections, and let me just start with this. If it's your listing, you need to get your clients to order all of the inspections up front. Right? And if you don't, if you're having trouble because you don't think that's necessary, call me and talk to me, right? Because you want all the inspections done up front. And what I would point out to clients is that it's probably going to save them thousands of dollars doing that. Save them. They'll say, well, we're talking about $1,000 and all these different inspections. It's going to save you thousands of dollars. And they don't have to pay right now. Most of them will bill escrow, right? They usually give you a discount if you pay up front, right? But they'll almost all bill escrow. If you find an inspector who won't do it, call another inspector. Somebody will bill escrow. Now, the reason why we want all the inspections up front is because those of you that heard Mike talk on the contracts class, and he's going to be here. When is he going to be here?
In 29.
Right. So and even if you guys went in Campbell, it wouldn't hurt to come again. I'm just saying. Right. But remember he was talking about in good faith. I know I've said this also. If you give the buyer's agent all of the inspections before the buyer makes an offer and you get a receipt for the documents, and I believe there's a form for that the California Association of Realtors has. We're going to go there by the time we're done, so that you have a receipt that says we've received all of these documents. They now can't use anything contained in those reports as an excuse to back out, because they knew about it when they made the offer. And they're going to say, well, we didn't read it. That's not our problem, because the receipt says we have received, read, and understand, right, the contents of these things. So do you understand what I'm saying? If you don't do that, because sometimes sellers are going to say, well, I don't want to spend money. Doesn't the buyer have to spend money on inspections? When we bought the house, we had to pay for the inspections, so I think they should have to pay for the inspections because we paid for the inspections, and I don't really think we ought to pay. So then they don't pay for any inspections, and then the buyer has 17 days, and they get all the inspections, and then they come back with a list of stuff that they want you to fix. And you don't have to fix it. You can say no and cancel the contract. And then you can change the status on the multiple listing service back to status 1. You can take off the sale pending sign. You can start printing more flyers, start scheduling open houses. And by the way, the clock is still ticking on the MLS. So it's going to show that your home has been on the market for 20 days, 30 days, 45 days. Can you change that? No, not unless they cancel and list it with another company. That's the only way to reset that clock.
Question on process. Open house, buyers interested in making an offer, can they get the reports? prior to
Yes.
making an offer?
Yes.
Okay, so then when do they get the receipt for those reports, or when are they handed the,
What I've done,
what's that process?
and this is a little bit advanced, but what I've done is I've created using this company called Google, and there's a thing called Google Documents, and Google Documents allows you to create a collection, which is what most of us would think of as a folder.
Well, so does MLS, so.
Right.
You can put all those reports on the MLS, and they can access.
That's right.
Their agent.
Right.
They can look at them,
Right.
review them, and then
Right.
if they want to make an offer, go ahead.
That's right. However, I would combine this with something called Wufoo. And Wufoo is an online form program. So what I would do is I'd give people the link to the Wufoo form. I would put the Wufoo form on the single property website. I would email the link to the Wufoo form to other agents. And in order for them to get this, link, they had to fill out this form. And they had to say who they were, where they worked, what their phone number was, and if they didn't, in their email address, and then when they hit submit, Wufoo would send them an email with a link to the documents. I could prove that they got the link to the documents. I also knew who they were. The problem with just having a folder on the internet that people can go and download it is that you don't know who downloaded it.
Even though you give them a password? Or
Well, I'm not sure how the MLS system works. I'm just saying that and by the way, the other thing about WUFU is it maintains a database that I can download as a comma-separated value file, which means that if the transaction fell through or something happened, I could easily, quickly email everybody that had ever downloaded the documents. But and part of the collection is a receipt. And part of the collection are instructions. And what the instructions say is, if you're going to make an offer, we want the receipt for the documents included with the offer. All right, now I've got them. All right, do you understand? Now, because if you represent the buyer and you get your buyer to sign that receipt and you include it with your offer, and I've given you every report, your ability to wiggle out of this transaction is now gone down to almost zero. All right, you can't say, well, there's too much Section 1 termite work, we've decided not to buy if you won't fix it. No, you got a copy of the report before you made the offer. You can't negotiate that. Not anymore. And if you do, you'll lose your deposit. Yeah.
But you know how you have the 17 days?
But the 17 days is for you to inspect the property and discover things you did not know. It is not a time period where you can take things you already knew and use that as an excuse to back out.
Okay, so you don't use the reports, but you can use like, oh, I didn't know there was a.
You have to be more. You have to be more creative.
Okay.
You have to be more creative, right?
More in the neighborhood. Like,
Well, yeah, but you just have to be. But most of the people, if they don't really want to buy, and they're not stupid. Sometimes I've had an agent representing buyers on one of my transactions tell me that the garage was 2.5, not 3 full cars, and that there wasn't enough room in the backyard to put in a kidney-shaped pool. We're canceling, and it was really because it didn't appraise, but the guy had 30% down, and it doesn't have to appraise with 30% down. He'd get the loan anyhow, and so they told me that's why they were backing out, and I told them, you're never going to see your deposit. Right? Because that's not, they saw the garage before they made the offer.
Yeah.
They saw the backyard before they made the offer. Right? You understand? That's not a good enough reason.
you have to say more like the neighborhood.
You have to say something else. But you understand, the point is, most of the time, they're not, the agents are not that smart. Right? You understand? Most of the time. And the idea is not that we want to keep their deposit, we want it to close. So if there's really $8,000 worth of Section 1 work, I want the buyer to see that. Remember we were talking yesterday about smells? If there's a bad smell in the house, I want the buyer to smell it before they make an offer, because I would rather that they smell it and make the offer than make the offer and smell it later and want out.
If there's an additional item that shows up on a new inspection report.
Then they can get out. Then they can get out for that.
Right.
They can get out for that. But most buyers, I've found, are so excited that they don't have to pay for the inspections and reports. They don't order other inspections and reports as long as you use well-known, reputable companies. Right? They're not going to order. They're cheap too. They don't want to buy another one. And if they do, then I could at least go to my inspector and say, hey, look at they, and let the two of them work it out. But what we've done by getting all the inspections up front and making sure, it's not just that we want the inspections. Right? An agent that I used to coach at another office who called me because she had one of her transactions tank. And she was the listing agent, and the sellers decided to fire her because the transaction fell apart. She had gotten the reports. She had given them to the buyer's agent, but she never got a receipt. Right? She never got the receipt. And they backed out because of the reports, and she didn't know that you couldn't do that. Right? You understand? That was the one little piece missing, and the listing had expired because it had been going on a while, decided that they were going to pick a different agent the next time.
So they had already made an offer.
Right. So what I'm saying from you, I listed a house over by Silver Creek. It was 5 years old, one owner. The fireplace had never had a fire in it because the people weren't into that. They had like a little a little thing of plants in the fireplace. They'd never lit a fire, and I told them I wanted them to get a chimney inspection. And they were like, we don't need a chimney inspection. We've never had a fire. There's nothing wrong. And I said, you get a chimney inspection. They got a chimney inspection, and there was a structural defect of the chimney, right, which was covered by the warranty of the builder, first 5 years, right? But had we not done that, if I had been representing the buyer, I would have explained that they build chimneys poorly sometimes, and I would have encouraged my client to get a chimney inspection. It was $3,500 worth of work on the chimney that had never had a fire in it, right? I got really good at convincing people to get all the inspections. I would tell them story after story of transactions that went down in flames because the seller did not have all the inspections up front. So if you represent the seller and you do this, your percentage of closing has just skyrocketed. Right? And by the way, your clients, you might think you're saving them a few $100s. They are not going to be happy with you if the buyers keep backing out in the middle. The first buyer gets a termite report, backs out. Second buyer gets a roof report, looks at your termite report, backs out. Do you understand? By the third time this has happened, they're looking for a new agent. And even if you eventually close it, what are they going to say about you? What are they going to say about the process? They're not going to be happy. Right? So I just want to be, if I'm being obtuse about this, am I being vague about this? If you represent the seller, you want to get all the reports up front. You want to fill out all the disclosures up front. You want to have it in a package that you can give to the buyer, and you want a receipt with the offer. Right? So that you can attach the two of them together. Yeah.
So I don't know if you want to go here, but so if I'm representing the buyer and it's a situation where there are no inspections good enough for us before we make the offer, and in this market, I say to my buyer, okay, we want to offer top dollar the first time, and here's the thing, they haven't done inspections.
Right.
We have 17 days to make sure this is exactly the house you want, so let's go with top dollar. And then
We'll negotiate them down. I used to tell buyers that. Well, we'll offer a high price because you're not out, and they don't have any inspections, and we'll wait till the last minute. All right?
wait till the
Last minute to remove the contingencies. We'll wait till the buyer, hopefully the seller's packed. All right? Hopefully the seller has increased their deposit on the house they're buying in Auburn. All right? Then we're going to hit them with the list, and we'll make them negotiate. By the way, in a buyer's market, I used to have a clause that says that if the seller if we discover certain things like Section 1 work, leaks in the property, I have a list. If we discover certain things wrong, because the seller had no reports, if we discover any of these things that are wrong as a result of our inspections, and the seller refuses to negotiate or fix them, that the seller has to pay us for the cost of the inspections.
How do you make that happen?
Well, I would say that if eventually we would take them to small claims court, but the seller would have to pay for the inspections if they wouldn't do the reasonable repairs. After the inspections, if I gave them and said that there's $5,000 of Section 1 work, the seller said, I'm not going to fix anything. Because what sometimes sellers will do, and their agents, is if they're cheap, and there's certain people that are just cheap, is they'll put it on the market, wait for some buyer to make an offer, do all the inspections. They refuse to fix anything. Buyer backs out. They now have a copy of the inspections. They then adjust the price and put it back on the market. So I used to have a clause that said that if you're planning on doing that, you have to pay us for the cost of the inspections.
I think that's what happened with a friend of mine's transaction.
Yeah. All right, but yeah.
So I've had incidents where the sellers have actually covered up evidence that there were termites in the house. They actually had an inspection, hid it, and then got another person to do the inspection and try to cover it up. I've had them where there were inspections on the roof where the contractor that did the inspection didn't do it thoroughly. We went in and we did our own inspection, and there was extensive damage to it. So I got into the habit of, even if there were
Yeah.
property inspections, I would have my buyers do it, and we would monitor it.
It would, best practices would be, if you represent the buyer, to get some of the same inspections repeated. Some of them, like the termite, the property inspection, not as much, because it's basically seeing, does the oven turn on, right? But the termite and the roof are the ones where a difference of opinion might be significant. Right, but the point is that if you have, how much more are they going to find? Right, do you understand? I mean, and I know that there's extremes in this. We're playing the odds. If you do this in advance and you get a receipt from the buyer that they've got it, the chances are this transaction is going to close on time. If you don't do this and you wait for the buyer to do their inspections and then you negotiate in the middle of the transaction, this is why transactions fall through, why sellers are miserable. They keep posting on Facebook what a horrible experience it has been, right? Over and over again. At first, you were proud to say you listed the house, and then they're posting again and again and again of what a terrible, horrible experience this has been. Right? So then the other thing is clear title. Now, it isn't mentioned here, but what that means is to read the preliminary title report, which the Old Republic Title is going to do that as part of their little class. And it also means to read the homeowner association documents. Now, if you represent the seller, my feeling at one time always was, if I represent the seller, I don't have to read the homeowner association documents. But I sort of modified that over the years because I wanted to know what's coming. If you represent the buyer, your job is to read the homeowner association documents. And sometimes they're like this thick, and you're going to say, I can't read all, I just can't do it. There's no way I'm going to read all that. You read the minutes of the homeowner association meetings. You read, which is a requirement. They give you 2 years of the newsletter, financial statements, and bylaws. You should read more, but if you only read those things, this is where all the good stuff is. And what'll happen is at the homeowner association meetings, they'll start discussing burglaries, assaults. They'll be discussing that they don't have enough money to fix the parking lot and that there's going to be an assessment. And what I would do when I represented the buyer is I would go through and highlight the good stuff, which really means the bad stuff. And I'd put little stickies on the side so I could find it. And I would have a copy to give to the buyer, but I would have them date and initial next to the things I've marked that I pointed it out to them. Because I don't want them to come back later and say, we never knew that there was going to be an increased assessment.
Are
Right?
those minutes accurate?
Sure.
Right.
Just thought I'd ask.
Right. They're as accurate as they can be. This is all you have.
Yeah.
Right. This is all you had. I've had clients interview the homeowner association president. I've had them go, I said, well, call them. Here's his, I got his phone number. Call the guy. Ask him questions. Why not? So, but you understand this is something else that could derail our transaction. Right? This is something else. Then there's the loan, and if you're using a good lender, this should not be a problem because they've already should have pre-approved the buyer. And the loan agent should have, all pre-approvals contain conditions. There's a long list of things. And you need to be working with somebody, and in both of the offices, you're not required to use the lenders that we suggest. I'm just saying if this is the first transaction and you're over here, I would use Lauren, and if you're over there, I would use Turnkey. I'm just saying you're not required to do it. Not everybody uses them, but you understand she's got a workstation here, right? You could find her and yell at her. She comes to the team meetings, right? You could be standing outside the door waiting for her. Right? She also I'm not saying she would do a bad job if she didn't know that, but you get the idea. You want to make sure that this is done by somebody who knows what they're doing.
Who is she with?
American, I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Does he do you? I don't know. I don't know, I have her card
So
someplace.
Turnkey and Campbell and this.
Yeah, Lauren Hutton is her name. If you go up to the front in the first workstation, take one of her cards.
Okay.
I have two. Anyhow, and then the HUD one. The issue involving the HUD one is that at some point in the transaction, preferably near the beginning of it, if you're representing the seller, when an offer comes in, you should be prepared to give them an estimated seller proceeds if they were to accept that offer. And that means if you don't know how to do this, you need to get the title company to show you how to do this. It's not rocket surgery, right? And they have online systems to do it, because what you want to be able to do is say to the seller, you accept this offer, you're going to get this much money. By the way, I always threw in $500 for miscellaneous, because what I wanted is for them to have a number higher than what was on my sheet, not lower than what was on my sheet. If they get a few $100s more than I told them they're going to be happy. If they get a few $100s less, I've got some explaining to do. And if it's a buyer, when they're making an offer, and the loan agent should have done this, they should have an estimated cash to close. Exactly how many dollars are they going to have to bring into escrow for everything, right? And if this is done poorly, I've had agents that worked for me that did this poorly, and the buyer didn't have enough money to close. Guess who helped them come up with the $1,000 they guess? You want to guess? It was the agent, right? Because the agent was starting to credit their commission because they had screwed up. They had given them the wrong number, right? So it's very easy for the escrow company to make an adjustment. They just take half of your commission, right, and apply it to the buyer's side, and now everything tallies. Isn't that nice? Right? Isn't that wonderful? So you understand what the buyer needs to have in terms of cash to close and what the seller's going to net. You need to have showed this to them 2 days before escrow closes. Otherwise, you're going to have problems. All right, is there anything about what I've said so far that sounds... So there's a list of what these words mean. If you can ask me later, but this shouldn't be that. Your contract to close checklist. Working your way from an accepted sales contract to the closing that rewards everyone requires that you follow a great checklist. So we sort of have one here, isn't that right? Buyer agent, the task. Now, one of the things I just want to show you, if we go to mykw.com, there are webinars on this. See where it says My Action Plans. And what this does, if you click on the little box, you can have a new assigned task to me, team tasks, other team tasks. If you click on my tasks that are due, it's going to pop up. Oh, it wants me to log in again. And I'm not going to go through how to do this, but what they have some different kinds of templates. Let me just see which ones they have here. So, custom templates, core templates, there's 12 of them. Open house listing, lessor, buyer contract to close, action plan. Seller contract to close, action plan. So the idea of all of these action plans work similarly. And by the way, if you were to be searching and researching project management software, which I feel embarrassed to admit was a topic of mine for a couple of years, you're going to find that this is a core ingredient of project management. And what it does is it usually begins with a start or an end date. And you have so many days from this. So the start date of the contract is not the date of the contract, right? The date of the contract is the date that the buyer wrote on the contract, or the agent of the buyer wrote on the contract when they wrote the offer. The effective date of the contract is the date the last necessary signature appeared on the contract, that date. That's when there's an acceptance. And the time periods, it's 17 days from acceptance. So many days from acceptance. So do you understand what you do is you launch it on this particular transaction and you make sure that it's got the right days in it, and you may have to modify this to fit the California Association of Realtors. We can do that as part of our coaching thing sometime when you get to this point. But what it'll do is it'll create this, it'll populate on your to-do list through MyKW what you need to do on each of these transactions. So, for example, when it comes time for the buyer, you represent the seller, the buyer is supposed to remove their contingencies. You do not want to miss this date. Right? You understand? You don't want to miss the date. Because if you miss the date, then it constitutes a waiver of the time is of the essence clause, because basically you're not enforcing timelines anymore. Timelines are no longer important. Obviously not, because you didn't do anything. You watched them come and go. So do you understand that the action plans there's a whole bunch of little time periods. You have 7 days to turn over all copies of all the reports and inspections. Have you done that? Yes or no? The buyer has so many days in order to give you proof that they have a loan if they haven't already done that. Have they done that or not? They have so many days to remove the financing contingency. They have so many days to remove the title contingency. They have so many days to, right, you understand? And you can put all these in, and then it'll remind you as you're going along what you need to do on that day. Yes?
If you are with a client and it's like 11:45 at night when your client finally signs the contract, accepting, would the effective be
That day.
that day?
That day.
Or should you get them to move it up a few minutes and make it the next day?
I don't really. What's going to happen if you went to court is they would talk about when it was communicated back, not when it is signed, right? But I didn't want to get that, to slice the bread that thin, right? But it's actually the date of communication, not the date of signed acceptance. So if you don't communicate it to the next day, it is the next day, right? But one of the things, by the way, does that illustrate an issue that there might be disagreements as to which day is the beginning day and which day is this day or that day? Do you understand? Right? Because it's not legally the date that the acceptance was signed. It was the date that the signed acceptance was communicated. And I've known agents take a couple of days to do that. But if you wanted this transaction to go smoothly, would you want to communicate with the other agent your idea of when all these things are supposed to be removed, right? Send them an email
Like,
as soon as possible, because if there's a disagreement, you'd like to know now. All right. So we have technology to do this, right? You understand, to get organized. Now, this, by the way, some of this can be done by the escrow coordinator, the transaction coordinator, right? I know that the software that Lindsay uses, she puts in those things and she'll remind you, right? That's part of the job. But I'm covering this because I know that no matter what I say, not everybody is going to be willing to spend the $350 to pay a transaction coordinator, right? But they will be able to spend thousands of dollars on an attorney, right, later. There's no problem with that. All right, so here are the different tasks. And I've given you a checklist, but deliver the earnest money to the listing agent. Don't do that. Who delivers the deposit to whom? The buyer to the escrow company. I never wanted the check. First of all, if I have the check, I have to give it to the MCA, and they have to take a record, and they have to give the check back, right? Because if I'm handling trust funds, I don't want the check. All right? I want the buyer to have the check, and I want the buyer to take it to the escrow company and give them the check. Then I want the escrow company to give them a receipt for it. And then the escrow company will send me a receipt, a copy of it. Then I'm not handling the money. You don't give the money to the listing agent. right? However, that is done in other areas. Schedule all the reports. All the reports. If the home is 40 years old or has any visible cracks in the sidewalk, driveway, or foundation, a foundation inspection is probably called for. I'm going to have inspectors come and talk to you, and one of the things that that the property inspector will say, there are hairline cracks in the foundation, and they'll say you ought to get a foundation. Further inspection is recommended. Right? Now, if you represent the buyer, you want to highlight that, stick it in front of the buyer's nose and says this means a foundation inspection. If the foundation is bad or going bad, you really want to know this before you buy the house. The roof inspection, a termite inspection, right? Well, there's a long list of them. Do you want me to write? Does everybody want to know what the list is? Do you want to? Just the basic inspections? All right, why don't we just... some of this I'll help you with if I'm coaching the people in Campbell that have mentors, have people that'll help them with this. But in terms of the inspections, there's the termite. I mean, we're going to have a termite person come probably and talk. There's the property, the roof. Those are the... If you don't have those three, you're making a big mistake. All right, so if you don't have those three.
Property's gonna cover all mechanical.
Most of it. They'll test the appliances and the outlets, and they'll look for obvious things.
HVAC.
Right. They turn on the heater and the air conditioning. They turn on the oven. They flush the toilets. They turn on the faucets. They see if hot water comes out and how long. They do all that stuff. Then, in addition, you want a chimney, which is also called a masonry inspection. A foundation, and this one you could wait until to see if the property inspector or the termite inspector recommend it, right? But if you're looking at the property, if you can take a tennis ball and lay it on the middle of the kitchen floor and let go and it rolls and hits the wall, get a foundation inspection. Right, I've been in houses that look like the Mystery Spot over in Santa Cruz, right? They sort of, I'm not, really, I literally, the thing with the tennis ball, I put it down and it bounced off the wall. There was a little slope in the floor, right? So if you have trouble opening windows and doors because they seem to stick a lot, that's right. If there is a pool or a spa, an inspection. Almost all hot tubs were made without the necessary electrical hookups. Almost all of them were. Right, and the electrician which would be called for is going to tell you that the panel is not designed to handle the wattage necessary to run the spa. That's what they're going to say. Right, and it's a fire hazard, and the lights are going to go off, and all that stuff.
What about electrical?
Well, that's
Regular though.
we could make an unlimited list, right, based upon what the property termite and some of the other people do. For example, if there's a septic tank, you want a septic inspection. It costs about $1,000. If there's a well inspection, it could cost about $1,000. Right, but these are kind of important things. Yeah.
I just want to know, like 15, because all the price would be different by size.
This basic group up here is going to cost about $1,000. Right, depending on, that's just my guesstimate based on experience. It's about $1,000. That's why one of the things that you ought to do is talk to all these different companies. I've been on asbestos inspections. I've seen radon gas formaldehyde inspections. I've seen by the way, there's asbestos everywhere. And the asbestos, it looks like a Geiger counter, at least what I've seen in the 1950 movies, with a little handle, little makes noise you know, and the guy's walking around, you're going, you know, and you know, and the buyers were freaking out because, oh, there's this bath, oh, there's everywhere, and the guy went out and on the sidewalk he put it down, and it went up like 10 times as high as it was in the house, and he went out on the road and he put it down, and it went up to like 100 times above what the house was, right? It's everywhere. Right. So, but what I always believed is that there's a thing called an environmental hazards book, which there's copies in there. Right. And one of the things that I would do with buyers is I'd actually go through the book with them. Most agents just give them a copy and get a receipt and tell them to read it if they have insomnia. Right. But in that book, it talks about radon gas, asbestos, and formaldehyde. JCP doesn't do that. This is called an environmental hazards book. It's also sometimes called the Green Book. Yes, up here, question, Miss.
Does mold and mildew come in?
Mold and mildew inspections are usually triggered by the the termite inspector and the property inspector, but there are separate inspections you can get for that. Yeah.
All of those information, shall I give buyer when you start talking, or?
You put them, you scan them, and you put them on a site where they can be accessed by other people. You want people to read them before they make an offer. Before they make an offer, and you want them to sign a receipt saying that they have a copy and have read them before they make an offer. So that the environmental hazards book, I'm sure there's copies in the room there, or if not, there's copies at the office. There's copies. You can get them if you were to Google search. You can find a copy online. It's a statutory requirement. If you don't have one, I have a copy in my sample documents folder on Google Documents. Just because, and the idea is I would go through it with buyers because if they wanted a formaldehyde inspection, I wanted them to have one.
That's just one of the normal disclosures.
It's a required disclosure, 1 to 4 units, owner-occupied residential property. It's a required disclosure. All right. So, what we don't want, this is where things usually go bad, is the amendment to request repairs and treatments. If there's a contingency period, this should be done before the dates of the contract, yes. Because after the 17 days has come and gone, you no longer have a legal right to ask stuff to be fixed.
So after the 7 days, you have to remove the contingency, or does it automatically?
If you don't remove the contingency, it depends on which contract you're using. If you're using the standard California Association of Realtors contract, the buyer has to do something. All right, the buyer can either accept it or they have to actually remove the contingency. The PRDS contract I haven't looked at it recently because I don't like to, but it used to have a clause that said that it's called a passive removal, which means that if the buyer doesn't say no, the answer is yes. But there was legal problems with that, so they may have changed it. I haven't looked recently. Right, but the idea is, and if I'm the listing agent, I want you to sign a piece of paper that says this. Contingency removal. There's a CAR form for contingency removal. Maybe, well, because we're having so much fun with this, on zip forms, the thing that I gave you was, and by the way, if you hear I'm not going to say an old agent, because I wouldn't say Mike is an old agent. How about an experienced agent? How about that? Does that sound better? An experienced agent.
Mature agent.
No, that sounds... An experienced agent. They may call this win forms. Right? I have to catch myself because sometimes I call it win forms too. But this is and that's because it used to be called win forms. Now it's called zip forms. It's the same thing. Contingency removal. By the way, as a real estate professional, would you want to be familiar with these forms?
Yes.
Buyer removal of contingencies. Now, notice the two choices. First of all, it says, buyer removes those contingencies specified below with respect to any contingency and cancellation right that buyer removes unless otherwise specified in a separate written agreement between buyer and seller as applicable. Buyer shall conclusively be deemed to have, one, or I, completed all buyer investigations and review of reports and other applicable information and disclosures, 2, elected to proceed with the transaction, and 3, assumed all liability, responsibility, and expense, if any, for repairs, corrections, or the inability to obtain financing. Is that pretty clear? And notice the choices are you could remove some or all. You can remove all except. You can add to it. If there's still a report missing, do not remove that contingency. Right? If you don't have a copy of the homeowner association documents, do not remove that contingency even though the time. Negotiate an extension for that particular, sometimes homeowner associations aren't. And notice this is buyer hereby removes any and all buyer contingencies. By the way, in the market, when I had a lot of listings in the market very much like this, and the relief I would get from buyer's agents when they would ask me, what reports do you have? And I'd say, all of them. And they'd say, well, what do you mean? And I would go through the list, and I'd just hear this, oh, thank God. Right? Oh, thank God. You have a chimney. People, that's when they'd go, oh, my God, you have a chimney. Right? You know, because I would always give my buyers get a chimney inspection. Always. It costs $5,000 to $15,000 to rebuild a chimney. Right? There are a lot of chimney problems. I mean, you have no idea. There's lots of chimney problems. So, and what would happen is that the agents who really wanted their client to get the property, because I had all the reports, they would submit this with their offer. Right? Some of them, because they'd say financing is not a contingency. Right? You understand? If you've got a good loan agent and you're confident and the buyer's got the cash and all that and the credit, I would have them just say no contingencies. Right? In this market, agents that are getting the deals are making offers with no contingencies. I would say this to a seller. If we don't have those reports, there will be contingencies. If we have the reports, we could sell your home with no contingencies. Huh? So you should be familiar with this. What?
Before you say no contingency, then you should have
all the reports. Right. The preliminary title report, I would have that online too. That's part of the.
It's really important. I was in Long Beach last year, and I was helping a client get a condo that was a conversion thing. Turned out that the person that was selling the property had no authorization to sell it, and the person on title was never involved in the transaction. It was a fraud.
The Old Republic is going to go through how to read a prelim, and I would sit to that class. Extension of time addendum. I'm just covering a few of the fun forms on zip forms. Because what you don't want to do is just informally extend a contingency. You want to do it in writing and get everybody to sign it. Otherwise, time is no longer of the essence. Other nice ones, how about estimated buyer costs? This is something that you could learn to do, although this is dangerous. This is the kind of thing you want your loan agent to do. Estimated seller net. All right? These are all CAR forms. Get a home inspection, homeowners interim.
So do you actually store those on your device, or are they in a cloud card?
They're in the cloud, and you can store them. There is a version of zip forms that you can download onto your computer, but the advantage of that is that you don't have to have an internet connection to make a form. But you could put it on a desktop or a laptop. But most people just do it. This is on the internet, what we're looking at right now.
Fill it all out, and then you can print it.
Right.
And all the original.
And it'll make it as a PDF, and you can email them. Notice to the buyer to perform. There's also a notice to the seller to perform. What happens if they do not remove their contingency on time? By the way, one of the things that was mentioned, I think in Mike's class, or one of them, is that if you know the contingency is supposed to be removed next Wednesday, you could do this on Tuesday. Now, the problem is that even though we say time is of the essence and the deadlines are absolute, the time is not always of the essence, and the deadlines are not always absolute. So what I'm saying is, let's say it says Wednesday the buyer is supposed to remove all their contingencies and they don't. Does that mean the contract is automatically canceled? You get to keep the deposit and sell it to somebody else? The answer is no. What do you have to do? You have to give a notice to the buyer to perform. Notice what it says down here. If you do not remove the contingencies, CAR forms RR and CR, or take the contractual action specified within 2 or after delivery, but no less than the time specified in the agreement, the seller may cancel. So what the courts have done is that they say you can't play gotcha, that you have to give somebody a warning, fire a shot across the bow first, before, in other words, you need to do this 2 days before the contingency is supposed to be removed. If you wait till the contingency is not removed and then you do it the day after, they're going to have essentially 3 days, right? Because that day plus these other 2, it's not an automatic cancellation and forfeiture. You need to give them a notice to perform. Then you can do it, right? I would read these forms. If you have a tablet PC, all of them, like what I've done is, you notice, is I've created a, like a fake transaction. The reason that I've gone to the trouble of doing that is that they won't allow you to save as a PDF or print or do things with forms that don't have a minimum amount of information on them. So I've downloaded everything. This is something that you could do. You can go through all the forms that are, there's some forms you're not going to need, but all the forms you're likely to use, save it as a PDF, and you could put it on a shared drive so that if you have a tablet PC and you're sitting around with nothing to do, you could read the forms. Right? Most of the issues that agents bring to brokers and managers are resolved by simply reading the form. I think Mr. Berry has a contract that's a class that says, what does the contract say? That's the whole class. And basically, I mean, I've done classes where real estate agents raise their hand and ask me questions, and all I did is read sections of the contract to them. Right? Is small claims court an exemption from arbitration? Let's take a look at the contract. What does it say? Under exceptions. Guess what? Small claims court. Next question. All right.
So I have a question on contingencies. If you remove the contingencies after this, I mean, can you extend the loan removal contingencies after the 7 days and do it?
If everybody agrees. Radon gas and mold notice. These are for certain kinds of properties. Let me find a receipt. Look at this one. Receipt for reports. Wow. Prepared by, dated. The following reports obtained or prepared by seller prior to acceptance. See that little box? These reports should not be considered as a substitute for obtaining your own inspections or reports covering the same terms or other matters. So notice that phrase, prior to acceptance. If buyer acknowledges receipt of the following written reports, documents, inspection reports, or disclosures, check below. Brokers have not verified such reports and make no representation. They might be completely lying, right? But you understand, if they sign this and include this with their offer, we've got them.
How many buyer's agents, well, I guess if you, as a seller's agent, you provide all those reports, then the buyer agent is obligated to?
They're not, they will ignore your requests regularly.
Okay.
However, what a buyer's agent is supposed to do, should do, is call you and say, I have a client interested in making an offer on your listing. First of all, is it still available? Great. Is there anything we should know on the offer? And they should say, do you have any reports, inspections? How do I get them if it's not already clear from the MLS? And I would say to them, by the way, one of the things that's included is a receipt for all of the inspections and reports. I want that with the offer, right? And most of the time, and I would emphasize, now you see in this market, if there's going to be multiple offers, I would emphasize to the buyer's agent that if they would like their offer to be accepted without us having to counter it, they should include this form with their offer, because otherwise we're going to counter that says that this document has got to be, we'll have to counter you, or just maybe accept somebody who did it who has a better offer, right? And so if they won't do this, this is a bad way to begin the relationship. Yeah.
I used to, when I have my open houses, I used to prepare packages of the disclosures, and with one of these.
We talked about that yesterday, making a binder and putting it in the house so people could read them.
I put it in packages and I give them to the people that are interested in making.
Well, but I don't normally give out all the inspections and reports to anybody who wants them without me knowing who they are and getting some sort of, so that's why I use that WUFU form, because I wanted them to fill out a form telling me who they are, what their name is, what their phone number is before they got it. I just, because first of all, we charge for copies. Well, you can do what you want, but I'm just saying I wouldn't just make. Cause what if there's homeowner association docs? You give them a copy of that? Yeah. You give anybody that wants a copy of that?
No, usually an agent comes in.
Yeah.
They're buying
Well, an agent. See, I would always tell them to go. I have a link. They go. They fill out that form. They get a link. They download it. They print it out themselves at their office, right? And I know that they have it. Request for repair or other corrective action. I hope you guys are right. I mean, I'm going through some of these obvious ones that would come up in accordance with the terms and conditions of buyer requests. Buyer requests that sellers prior to final verification of condition. That's also known as a walkthrough. Repair or take other specified action for each item listed below, or if checked on the attached list dated. Right? This is not something you want to see in the middle of escrow. Right? This is not something you want to see, but if we don't have the reports. See, the buyer made an offer assuming the house was in adequate condition. It's not. They're going to negotiate. And then there's copies, seller's response. If buyer agrees, I, to remove the writings of the contingencies identified in the attached contingency removal form, and to release seller and brokers from any loss, liability, expense, claim, or cause of action regarding the disclosed property. Check all that apply. Seller agrees to all. Seller agrees to some. Seller agrees to credit. Seller does not agree, or other. I used to tell my sellers that you have 3 options. You could pay for all, you could pay for none, or we could split it. By we, I don't mean me. I mean you and the bank, right?
Talk about needed repairs.
Needed repairs. You don't have to pay for all. Why don't we? This is called negotiation. Right? Now, you understand if we have the reports, there's probably less of this going on, but it's either yes, no, or all, none, or some are really your 3 choices. Buyer's reply to seller. Buyer accepts seller's response, withdraws all requests, items, and credits that seller has not agreed to, and both removes the contingencies and agrees to the release identified in 2, or buyer withdraws from the collection and makes no new requests. Right? Now, the thing is, if the seller says no, the buyer can cancel the contract. If the seller says no, the buyer can cancel the contract. Right? That's the... Oh, let's see, what other forms do we have? I really like this part. Seller non-agency, seller property, seller advisory, sellers on short sales, sales, a single party contests. Transaction checklist, I already showed you that. Verification of property condition is called the walkthrough. I would read through this, this is not a condition of closing. However, what I would tell buyers is that if you believe that the property has been not maintained, notice it says, buyer acknowledges the property is in substantially the same condition as of the date of acceptance of the offer to purchase, sell, and 2, seller has completed any repairs or modifications of each of buyer the seller exceptions. So what we would be doing here is we would be listing things, notice how many lines they give you, that are something that is substantially different or not fixed. The evaluation of the condition of the property, including any items listed above, is based on a personal inspection by buyer and or 2, broker recommends that buyer conduct a final. If buyer, I've had people say I don't want to do it, and I'd make them sign that they waive the right. What can the buyer do if there are problems here? Notice it says, the purpose of this inspection is to satisfy buyer regarding the condition of the property. That in other way, prior contractual agreement, a final inspection is not a contingency of the purchase and sale. The inspection or waiver is not intended in any way to alter the contractual obligations of the seller. The inspection is not based upon the statement. But the bottom line is let's say the buyer sees things that are broken or not fixed. What can the buyer do? Not close. Not close. I would tell clients, don't close.
Do an extension? Do you have to do?
You can do that. You send a request for repairs and an extension agreement. At this point, you'd be talking to us. If you're in this transaction, you'd be talking to people in the office about what exactly to send them, but you would want a request for repairs and an extension of the close of escrow. But you don't want...
It's also that you have a deadline to close.
Well, that may cause trouble. Yeah, it may cause trouble. But you need to talk to the lender. But the idea is that if you're doing this right, you should know about this stuff more than a few days before escrow closing. Right? This is the problem with the 30-day close. All right? Does everybody understand? This is a problem. Now, if nothing is being fixed and there aren't any contingencies and you're waiving them all, you can close as fast as you can get funding.
But you need to do this.
You should do
Everything's
this.
okay, you need to have them sign.
Right. Because what we're doing, a lot of these forms were written by, what's the agency that's prepared these forms? The California Association of Realtors. So the reason for us doing this is we don't want the buyer to say afterwards, well, I didn't notice that the thing was broken. And they want you to pay for it. All right. Any other fun? There are a lot of fun forms. Let's see. Water heater withdrawal and the wood destroying pests and allocation of costs. This is about termite work. All right. And if you want the seller to pay for Section 1 or Section 2 items. Is there anything else I want to do here? Additional authorization of business, carbon monoxide detector. All right, well, that's enough of those. All right. But I would pay some attention to this. This part, negotiate for repairs and treatments, is the big part. Surveys, we don't normally do surveys unless it's land. And if it's vacant land, you should get a survey done. That's going to cost more than $1,000.
What if you have a property, and let's say it says it's a 6,000 square foot lot, and you can see it's much larger than a 6,000 square foot lot?
Well, if the buyer is concerned, they should have a survey done. Fences are not often put where they're supposed to be. And the fact that a fence is there, that does not indicate where the boundary is, nor is it an agreement to change the boundary. If you really want to waste a few days, Google search the agreed boundary doctrine in California, and you can read court cases where people have sued each other over whether or not the fence was the boundary line. Right? And what you're going to find is that the fence is not the boundary line, it's just where the fence is. Right? And so you can get information from the title company that shows you a diagram of the property, right? The plot map, right? But the only way to know, I've never done this on a residential property, but almost all, where there's a house, almost all land needs to have a survey, because sometimes there aren't even fences. And even if there are fences, that does not mean the fence was put anywhere near where the boundary is. And that means that you have to have a surveyor come out and determine the corners. Generally there's 4, sometimes more, depending on if it's irregularly shaped, the 4 corners of the lot. We're talking about $1,000 and up.
Where's the front corners at? Sidewalk, middle of the street, typically?
Why are you asking? Generally speaking, the property line goes to the middle of the street. And they do that because they want you to pay property taxes on a larger lot. And what the city has is they don't actually own the street, they own an easement. And so I used to do this thing, do you own to the sidewalk, do you own to the curb, or to the middle of the street? And you own to the middle of the street, right? But the city has an easement for the sidewalk and the street, right? Why do they want to own the street? Why? Let you own the street, right? But we're not, anyhow. Schedule appraisal. Yes, question.
I forgot what zero lot line means.
A zero lot line means that you can build right up to the edge of the lot. Most residential properties have what are called front setbacks, side setbacks, which includes the back. A typical one would be 20 feet from the street and 4 feet from the property line. So a zero lot line means that you could build right to the edge, right? There aren't many of those.
Burbank has that.
What?
Burbank area has
Yeah,
that.
but not, I'm talking about in San Jose. Not many of
It's
them.
in-
Oh, the Burbank Rose Garden. Some of the old Burbank homes, I've sold one where it was like inches from the property line, right? But normally, you're not going to find those very often.
About R18.
A what?
The lot is zoning is R18.
R18.
R1, I know what R1 is, but what does it mean by R18?
Are you sure it's not R16? Could be an R18. The R's have it. The R designations of zoning vary from county to county. And so what you're talking about is a zoning for an apartment building. Because the cutoff is 16 or more units is when the zoning changes. And we have like an R6 and an R12, and then it goes up. There's a whole bunch of them. That's something you could Google search. But generally 16 or more is a separate zoning code. So this would be a large apartment building.
Higher density.
And the R numbers is at sometimes maximums, and then it's sometimes the minimum
I
until.
saw single and family home, and they put in code R18. I don't understand why.
R18 is for a multiple unit dwelling. I haven't heard of R18. I've heard of R16. Right, but I don't know that one. All right.
So they put in by mistake or it
Could, I don't know. It could be a
I
mistake.
go city and I go county. They don't know.
No, there's an R. I've never heard of an R. There's an R16, R12. There's R6, R1, R2, R3. R2's from Star Wars, of course. R3, R4, right, and then they go up. Right, actually, it goes from R3 to R6 in Santa Clara County. And this varies from county to county. So this would be something for a field trip to the county recorder, to the county planning commission. All right. So schedule appraisal. You need to do that right away. The lender is going to help with that. All appraisals are done through appraisal management companies. AMC, which used to be a car company at one time, but and you're not allowed to bribe, threaten the appraiser, but you can communicate. So I used to be there when the appraiser was there, and I would bring my own comps to show them. Right? There's nothing illegal about that. If you bring a gun, a knife, or a club, you may have, or cash, right? Then you're probably going too far. But a lot of times with the appraisal management companies, the appraisers are not from around these parts. right? They give it to the person who makes the cheapest bid. And they sometimes are coming from Castro Valley, and they're like, wow, these homes are really expensive. You know, yeah. So schedule closing appointment if necessary. The loan agent, my recommendation is that, especially when you're new, you want to be there for the buyer's closing. The buyer's closing will either be at the title company or in the loan agent's office. Because almost every piece of paper that the buyer is going to sign has to do with the loan, but not all of them. So sometimes the title company will give the forms that they want the buyer to sign to the loan agent, because loan agents sometimes they are efficient and don't want to leave their office, right? But otherwise, the loan agent will then provide the documents, the loan documents to the title company, and you'll do it there. The sellers will sign at the title company. However, friendly title companies will come to you to sign documents. And they can make arrangements elsewhere. This is something that you need to schedule. You need to schedule the final walkthrough. Remember that action plan. These are all things that you want in your calendar. All right. If you have one deal, this isn't so hard. Try 15 listings with 6 escrows. Right. And by that time, you should have an assistant. I did. But did you understand now? These are like all over the place. Right. You need to be organized. Coordinate move-in dates. Moving in early requires a form called an interim occupancy agreement. It's dangerous to do, but sometimes, let's say it's vacant, the buyer wants to move in early and is willing to pay the seller rent. Right? Sometimes the seller will say, sure, why not? Right? Especially if you've got strong, as long as you close and they don't break stuff. But let's say they move early and something breaks. You have the home warranty. We're going to talk about that. Coordinate move-in dates. Sometimes the seller wants to stay late. This is also dangerous, right? But under our current market, sellers are getting what they want. So sometimes agents are offering the seller a week or two of rent-free, so that they can get their money and move on their own schedule. Right? Even if you do that, you want to use PAA, which stands for Purchase Agreement Addendum. How am I doing on time? I assume you guys find it valuable to see which forms you need to pay attention to. Maybe not, but where is PAA? Let me go back here and open this up. PAA. So I'm going to do it alpha. It's right here, PAA. PAA is a multi-purpose form. It's a multi-purpose form. First of all, it's where you have the backup offer, right? Which, if you're going to have a backup offer, you put it here. Seller to remain in possession after close of escrow. Issues are tenant insurance. Tenant coverage for insurance. You understand the current policy that the seller has does not cover tenants. The insurance policy doesn't cover tenants because it's a home ownership policy. But now you have a tenant, and it's called the seller. And if the house catches on fire while the seller is renting, guess what? Not covered. Not covered, right? So you need to talk to the insurance agent. And even if you're not paying rent, you want them to sign. I usually have them sign a rental agreement. No, seller's personal property including is not insured by buyers. There's another thing here. Seller's own. And they should talk to the insurance company. But you're going to want to fill this out. Tenant to remain in possession is covered there. Sometimes you're buying property and the tenant isn't moving out because you don't want the tenant to move out. And then this is for a second loan and court confirmation. If it's a probate sale, there's additional forms, which I'm not going to go into. But in terms of moving out, the other one is called the interim occupancy agreement, interim occupancy agreement. And this is the agreement that allows the buyer to move in early. And it has rent and security deposits and things like that. A lot of times people say, well, Does the seller have to leave a security deposit? Well, they don't want to. They break stuff, right? So I'm just saying that this is a form you want to think about. There have been lots of issues, including lawsuits, about sellers that stayed late and something broke while they were there, and then the buyer wasn't happy and there's no security deposit. What will happen is the buyer's going to blame you if you don't have all the right forms filled out. Right? And the seller will blame you if you let the buyer move in and everything isn't done to protect the seller.
Does your home warranty, if you buy the home warranty, does that cover that?
Yes. Yes, but the home warranty doesn't cover everything.
Right.
And it's always those other things. Notice how long this form is. All right, so it's a 6-page interim occupancy agreement. Just saying, there's lots of issues involved, obviously. And how do they write these forms? What do they base the writing of the forms on? Lawsuits and legal problems. This is a 6-page form. That should tell you something. All right? They've had lots of problems with buyers moving in early. And then they don't close. And you understand that they're not trespassers, they're tenants, and you have to go through normal eviction process to get rid of them. A seller who won't leave after the rent back is a tenant and has to be evicted using normal. They're not a trespasser. The cops will not come and drag them out. How long does it take to evict somebody? At least 28 days if you know what you're doing and have the right lawyer. Minimum. Could it take a lot longer? Yeah. Right. I avoided this wherever possible. All right, so review the HUD 1 settlement statement prior to closing. You do not want them calling you up, screaming at you, because they needed to bring in more money than they thought, or they didn't get as much money. I had a seller once tell me, I sold this house in Silver Creek, and he's saying to me, "You're making more money than I am." All right, I heard that, because that's what he said, "You're getting more money than I am." And I said, "No." I said, "You've already taken your money out of the house," right? Because he took other loans against the property. You've already taken your money out. Don't give me that. But do you understand, is this sometimes an emotionally charged document? Mm-hmm. 10 closing, you want to be there when the seller signs off and the buyer signs off. If you get busy, I have to admit I wasn't always there, but I was busy and I had an assistant. Listing agent contract to close. When you list the home, you want to open escrow right away. The escrow officer is going to tell you that, so you get a prelim. And I'm going to let the escrow company go through this with you. We're going to have escrow 101. This is just a general form. Problem solvers. Wait a minute, is this, So, where are we? I think there are the things written in here. So, because we're getting to the end of this class and I've covered some of the other things, these are some examples of issues that could come up. And the idea here is that you should think of, Machiavelli said, in time of peace, prepare for war. You should look at these lists, and the escrow company, I'm going to encourage Rita, who's going to be doing the presentation, to go over all the things that could go wrong. Right? Because you need to have that in your mind and make sure that they don't happen. Create buyer and seller closing packets. This is available from eEdge. And there's a closing guide, there's a sample letter, and you can, this is all available on eEdge for you to download, and it explains stuff. What you're going to find is that the title company is going to have additional information that you could include. The title company has stuff that explains escrow. California escrow is different than New York, Texas, and most states. All right, we do things differently. Isn't that a shock?
Much more detail.
much more, we have title insurance, it's different. The escrow company will be happy to provide you with instructional materials that you could give to a client to explain the process. They'll be happy to. Leverage resources. Do you have a productivity coach? Some of you do. ALC, what's that stand for? Isn't that a disease? Isn't it? It stands for the Associate Leadership Council. Other mentors, these are people. Ask us questions. Most of you are in my coaching program. Ask. Some of you have mentors. It doesn't matter if you have a question. Ask. Frankly, I would rather get a call. I've gotten a call at 10 o'clock on a Sunday night from an agent because they were making an offer on the property and the listing agent said, oh, by the way, there used to be a meth lab in the property. So the agent called me and said, you know, the buyer knows they still want to make an offer. Is there anything special I should do? Guess what? The CAR has a form for that. We are in California, aren't we? There's a form for that, and I explained to her that there is an inspection you can have done. There's meth lab inspectors. And I went through what you might consider to be an obvious, if you think about it, the obvious issues involving having a former meth lab in the house. Do you understand that I'm just talking about for those of you that I'm coaching, and if you have a mentor, I would rather talk to you then about it than Monday when we have a contract that doesn't have. By the way, the 17 days allows the buyer to do any inspection they want. Because the agent was saying, do I have to write in that we want a meth lab inspection? And the answer is no. You get the right to do any inspection that you want. All right? So, and then here's a little thing about the My Transactions, which is a calendar tool in My Contact. eEdge, in addition to the action plans, has a section called My Transactions. And there's videos. And it's transaction coordination software that is available as an integrated part, including electronic signatures. And what are the things that you really need to do once you get paid, right? You want to get paid. And grow your business with Touch Power. Notice it talks about the 33 Touch program. You want to follow up with people that you've done business with. You want to send them newsletters. You want to call them on the anniversary. Ask people questions. When's your birthday? When's wedding? You want. I had clients that sometimes would invite me. They would have a housewarming party and they would invite me. And one guy went through this big speech about what a great job I had done. All right. And then somebody said, do you have a business card? And I said, no. Oh, yeah, I guess I did bring some. Gee, right? So do you understand that a significant percentage of business that Experience Agent gets comes from past clients and referrals from past clients? If you don't get future business from past clients or referrals from past clients, you will probably not survive in the real estate business. If you assume that just because you did a great job, they will not forget you, always remember you, and will refer people to you just because they should, you may be mistaken. Right? One of the things that I used to do is, Sunset Magazine is one of them. There are many home magazines that will do this, where you can buy a subscription for somebody else and they'll put on the label compliments of, have your name, and some of them will include your phone number or other information. Many of the home magazine companies will do this because they've realized that real estate agents might buy it. If you go to the Keller Williams family reunion, which I'm recommending that you do in February, you're going to see every booth in the world selling stuff. And there's a bunch of closing gifts. One of the closing gifts that I saw at the Mega Camp was there are these high-end knives, Cutco or something like that, and they actually engrave your name and information on it, right? And I said to the guy that arming my clients was never, I thought, a good idea, right? You know, I wouldn't give them a gun either necessarily, but the idea is that there's a limit that the IRS will allow you to deduct for a closing gift. However, if it's got your name and contact information, it falls under the category of marketing, which you can deduct on your Schedule C. I'm not giving tax advice. But do you understand that if it's got your contact information, it's a marketing expense and not a closing gift? Right? But do you want them to remember you? Right? Launch a 33 Touch campaign. Add all participants, agents, lenders, closing officers, termite title, the asbestos guy, add them all. Call your new past clients. Send them a survey asking how you did. Ask them, especially with buyers and sellers, ask them if they'd be willing to do a testimonial. What would be the best form of that? Yelp, that wouldn't hurt. Yes, I would recommend. Let me just say a word about Yelp. Yelp reviews only count if the person is a Yelper. So if you don't use Yelp and you review me, and it's you create a Yelp account, you write a review, and you've never done anything else, never reviewed anybody else, they're not going to let your review appear on my Yelp page. They're not going to do it. If they do, they have it as a, what do they call it, a review, something review, and a filtered review, and somebody has to click on the little button to see it. And what they see at first is a video from Yelp explaining why you really can't believe this review. Right? That's pretty much what it says. And then they'll show the review. So I used to ask people, do you Yelp? And they say, yeah, all the time. Cool. Write me a review. But what also could be better than that. We want Yelp reviews. This is SEO course because our ranking of our website will increase if we have Yelp reviews. What else? How about? I'm just going to, because I'm getting tired. Just say it. We'll go on. Will your smartphone make a video?
Yes.
With audio?
Yes.
Could you get people standing in front of the house when they're really happy to say something nice? All right. All right. Yeah, well, do you understand that one of the things that separates successful agents is testimonials? It's called also in the internet marketing world social proof. Have you ever bought something because the TV had all these people saying, I tried the gum and I lost, the fiber gum, right? And I lost weight, or something like that, right? Fiber gum, anyhow. So you want to. When I'm doing this, there's some agents that I can see the look on their face. I've actually had people come up to me and say, well, I don't really feel comfortable doing this. Asking people for reviews, asking if you can get a little video of them, asking for them to, I don't feel comfortable doing this. And I feel like saying, you're not going to make it in the business. That's what I feel like saying when people tell me that. You're just not going to make it. I don't know, does that sound harsh?
So you ask them, if they say no, that's okay.
That's okay.
At least they may say yes.
Right. Most of the people will say yes.
If you did a good job.
If you did a good job. Right? Most people say, some people are excited to do it. Right? And then if you get that little video, could you put it on Facebook, web pages, and other things under reviews?
Absolutely.
Right? People, you say you're a great real estate agent. Wouldn't it help if there were videos of real life people saying what a great job you did? That's why Yelp has become successful. I've been in cars with people where it's, does anybody know a Thai restaurant? And people in the back are going, they're on Yelp saying, well, this one has 5 stars, this one has, and they're looking at how many, right? Do you understand? People care about that, right? If you don't do this, you will sell less real estate. Get referrals, follow up with past clients, ask for reviews and testimonials. And then there's some things here about you should send them a handwritten note, movie ticket, gift baskets. You should. It costs a lot more to get a new client than it does to keep an existing client. A referral is the best client you'll ever get. If you run Craigslist ads, get somebody to come eventually and meet with you, and it's a completely cold contact, those people oftentimes are the most difficult to work with. You're constantly having to convince them they ought to work with you. But remember, the National Association of Realtors survey showed that high 40s of buyers and low 60s of sellers only interviewed one agent. Right? They're not from Craigslist. They're referrals. Do you understand what I'm saying? If somebody refers you to a friend, family, coworker, chances are really good you'll be the only person they're talking to. And they're not going to ask you to cut commissions. Most likely. They're not going to be difficult. They're going to be more cooperative. They'll follow your advice. And it's a whole lot better transaction. So if you say to me, I'm not going to bug people that I've already worked with by calling them and asking how it's going, and I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to ask them for reviews. I'm not going to ask them for testimonials. I'm not going to remind them for referrals. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to go find. Your chances of surviving have dropped dramatically. People that have been in the business a long time are coasting because people just are calling them. I can remember when it first kicked in, they called me, guy calls me and he says, hi, remember us? You sold us a home 3 years ago? It's time for us to buy something bigger. Can you come by and talk about putting our home on the market? And I was like, wow. All right. Huh? It's called a listing appointment, and then and I listed their house and it sold, and I sold them a house. Do you understand that? Okay. Was there any questions?
Do we have statistics that reflect the turnover here in Silicon Valley? You had mentioned previously that a lot of people that liquidate or sell leave the area.
Right. The answer to the question about what is the turnover rate, it depends upon the zip code significantly, and it depends upon the price range. But what I use as a general rule of thumb is somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 to 15 years. The national average is only 8, but right now in our market, because there's a lot of people that haven't sold because prices went down and then prices are going up now, it's been less. So when I'm suggesting doing statistics, like if you talk to 10 people a day, 5 days a week, that's 50 a week, times 50 weeks is 2,500 people. And if you assume that people every 10 years sell, that's, when you start, you're saying they'll give you a sense. But if you were to run Blossom Valley and 95123, you'd find a different number. Right. And title companies can help you with that because they know how many people live in an area, and they know how many people transfer their title in an area. And if you ask them, they'll tell you what the turnover rate is. All right? Was that enough? That's, oh, yeah.
Question on Monday.
Yeah.
Is it a short class or what?
It's a short class. It's for accountability.